What if Mark Grayson, the son of Omni-Man, had never been raised by a conflicted father trying to balance love and conquest, but instead by the most ruthless Viltrumite to ever live, Thragg? In the original Invincible timeline, Mark grows up believing he is meant to be a hero. He struggles, he fails, he loves, and he learns. But all of that comes from Nolan's hesitation, from the cracks in the Viltrumite mission that slowly widen as he bonds with humanity. Remove those cracks. Replace them with absolute conviction. Replace Nolan with Thragg. Everything changes. For this scenario to work, we need to imagine that Thragg never fully trusted Nolan with Earth. Maybe he sensed weakness. Maybe he believed the son of Omni-Man would be too important to leave to chance. So instead of watching from afar, Thragg arrives on Earth the moment Mark's powers manifest. The day Mark lifts a trash bag and realizes he has powers is the same day his childhood ends. Thragg confronts Nolan immediately. There is no emotional speech, no attempt at persuasion. Thragg sees hesitation in Omni-Man and interprets it as treason. Their battle levels cities. Debbie never understands what is happening. And when the dust settles, Nolan is dead, not defeated, not imprisoned, executed. Mark watches it happen, and in that moment, Thragg tells him the truth. Not the half-truth Nolan told, not the lie about protecting Earth, the full truth. Viltrumites are the rightful rulers of the galaxy. Strength defines morality, weak species exist to be conquered, and Mark, as the son of a powerful Viltrumite, has a duty to rise above his human weakness. Thragg does not comfort him, he does not allow him to grieve, he tells him that if Nolan was too weak to complete his mission, then Mark will not repeat that failure. The first thing Thragg does is remove every human influence from Mark's life. Debbie is either taken hostage to ensure obedience or quietly eliminated to prevent attachment. There is no high school, no part-time job, no hanging out with William, no Amber. Mark is taken off-world almost immediately. Thragg believes Earth is too soft, too corrupting. Mark's training begins on a desolate, Viltrumite-controlled planet where survival itself is a test. Unlike Nolan, who held back when training his son, Thragg shows no restraint. Mark is beaten to the brink of death daily. His bones shatter, his organs rupture, and each time he heals stronger. Thragg teaches him that pain is purification, that every human emotion he feels is a flaw to burn away. When Mark hesitates during combat simulations, Thragg reminds him that his human half makes him inferior, that mercy is a defect, that love is a chain. Mark grows up not with encouragement, but with relentless comparison to pure-blooded warriors. Thragg frames everything as a test of worth. You are not Omni-Man's son, he tells him. You are Viltrumite. Prove it. Over time, Mark stops questioning. He learns to suppress guilt. He learns to detach from suffering. Thragg doesn't just train him physically, he educates him in conquest strategy, interstellar logistics, and population control. Mark studies how Viltrumites subjugated entire civilizations. He learns how to destabilize governments before invasion, how to turn factions against each other, how to make a planet beg for order before imposing it. When Thragg decides Mark is ready, they return to Earth. But this time, there is no secret massacre of the Guardians by Nolan. There is no attempt to maintain a heroic image. Thragg orders Mark to eliminate the Guardians of the Globe as a loyalty test. The battle is not fueled by emotion, it is precise. Mark analyzes each member's abilities and dismantles them systematically. There is no rage, no tears, just efficiency. The world watches its greatest heroes die at the hands of a teenager who does not even raise his voice. Cecil and the Global Defense Agency attempt to respond, but this Mark knows their tactics. Military installations are neutralized within hours, satellites fall from orbit, nuclear deterrents are rendered meaningless when facing a being who can survive about anything. Mark personally confronts Cecil, not out of hatred, but to send a message. I surrender and serve, or resist and be erased. The teen team never becomes his friends. Adam, Eve, Rexplode, and the others are classified as potential threats. Thragg orders their elimination. Mark hunts them down one by one. With Eve, however, things become more complicated. Thragg recognizes her molecular manipulation as strategically valuable. Instead of killing her, Mark subdues her, not gently, not mercifully. He presents her to Thragg as an asset. Eve is given a choice: reshape worlds for the Empire or watch Earth suffer. In this timeline, her story becomes a tragedy. She is forced to terraform conquered planets, reshaping ecosystems to suit Viltrumite expansion. Any spark of connection that might have formed between her and Mark is buried under indoctrination. When she looks at him, she sees not the awkward boy she might have loved, but a soldier shaped by brutality. The Viltrumites would not use Eve randomly or inefficiently. They would build entire conquest systems around her abilities. The first and most obvious use would be planetary terraforming at a speed never before possible. Normally, when Viltrumites conquer a world, colonization takes a while. Worlds must be stabilized, and infrastructure must be built from scratch. With Eve, that timeline shortens. On a newly conquered planet, Eve could begin by altering atmospheric chemistry, increasing oxygen ratios, or removing toxic gases molecule by molecule until Viltrumite soldiers could breathe comfortably. She could compress soil density to make land more stable for construction, or convert barren rock into fertile ground by rearranging mineral composition. Oceans could be purified instantly by removing contaminants at the molecular level, but terraforming would only be the beginning. Eve's powers would revolutionize Viltrumite military infrastructure. She could construct fortresses out of raw planetary material in hours. Defensive walls could rise from the ground instantly, landing zones could be flattened and stabilized, energy production could be transformed as well. Eve could restructure matter into highly efficient fuel sources or build reactor systems directly from raw elements. The Viltrumites would no longer depend on long supply chains because Eve could create what they needed almost anywhere. Psychological warfare would become easier with Eve's abilities. The Viltrumites could destroy a city in minutes, then force Eve to rebuild it differently as a demonstration of power. Entire landscapes could be reshaped overnight to erase cultural landmarks or historical monuments. A mountain considered sacred could be flattened. A valley could become a fortress. The message would be clear. Nothing is permanent except Viltrumite rule. Every part of empire building becomes faster with her involvement. Over time, the Viltrumites would likely reorganize their expansion strategy entirely around Eve's existence. Instead of slow, methodical conquest followed by decades of colonization, they could invade, secure the population, and immediately begin planetary transformation. Worlds that once required generations to integrate into the empire could be completed within a single Viltrumite lifetime. Eve would not just be a prisoner, she would be the foundation of a new imperial era. And the cruelest detail is that every structure she creates, every world she reshapes, every city she builds would strengthen the empire that holds her captive, while Mark stands nearby, believing this efficiency proves the righteousness of Viltrumite rule. Eventually, word spreads across the galaxy, and the coalition of planets sends Alan the alien to investigate Earth. Instead of finding a young hero who can be persuaded to resist the Empire, Alan finds Earth already subdued. He confronts Mark, expecting arrogance. What he encounters is something colder. Mark defeats him decisively, not out of pride, but to gather intelligence. Thragg interrogates Alan about the coalition's weaknesses. The information accelerates Viltrumite expansion. Then comes Battle Beast, drawn by rumors of a powerful warrior. In the original timeline, Battle Beast seeks honorable combat. Here, he finds none. Mark fights like Thragg taught him. No speeches, no fairness. He exploits every opening, targets vital points, and refuses to prolong the fight for spectacle. Battle Beast dies confused, denied the glorious duel he sought. Mark claims his weapon not as a trophy of pride, but as a symbol of dominance. When Angstrom Levy begins experimenting with alternate realities, he expects chaos. What he doesn't expect is efficiency. In most timelines, the Invincible War is brutal but disorganized. Different versions of Mark arrive with different motives, personalities, and levels of control. Some are unstable, some are angry, some are desperate, but in this timeline, they don't arrive to a confused hero trying to defend Earth. They arrive on a planet already under Viltrumite order, commanded by a Mark trained personally by Thragg. The Invincibles' war doesn't become a clash of egos, it becomes a military operation. The moment alternate Marks begin appearing, this Mark doesn't react emotionally. He analyzes, he isolates, he eliminates communication between them. Instead of charging into battle, he allows them to spread out, then hunts them one by one with calculated precision. Some are stronger, some are more ruthless, but none are more disciplined. Several alternate Marks expect hesitation. They expect the internal conflict they've seen in their own lives. Instead, they face someone who has already committed fully to conquest. The battlefield becomes a trap. Mark captures multiple variants alive rather than killing them immediately. That choice alone shifts everything. Under Thragg's philosophy, information is as valuable as strength. These captured Marks are interrogated systematically. He learns which dimensions saw Viltrum fall, which timelines led to rebellion, which relationships caused doubt. He hears about versions of himself who sided with humanity, who loved Adam Eve, who fought against the Empire alongside Omni-Man. In another version of his life, those revelations might have planted uncertainty. Here, they do the opposite. They confirm vulnerability points. Love leads leads to rebellion, attachment leads to hesitation, exposure to human influence creates ideological fracture. Instead of questioning Thragg, Mark refines his loyalty. He becomes obsessed with eliminating every variable that could produce the weaker versions of himself he now sees in front of him. Each execution becomes symbolic. He isn't just killing alternates, he is erasing possible futures. When the war ends, it's a massacre. Earth remains stable, the Empire remains intact, and Mark walks away stronger, armed with knowledge of countless realities. Thragg doesn't scold him for curiosity or cruelty. He approves, because for the first time, the Empire possesses something even more valuable than strength. A warrior who understands every path that leads to rebellion and has chosen deliberately to avoid them all. Over time, Mark grows stronger. Thragg pushes him beyond even typical Viltrumite limits. Near-star training sessions, survival in black hole gravity wells, endless combat against captured warriors. Mark's human heritage, once framed as weakness, begins to show its advantage. His adaptability surpasses pure-blooded Viltrumites. His growth rate exceeds expectations. The most dangerous change would be biological. Mark's hybrid physiology gives him something pure Viltrumites lack: a powerful human adrenaline response. In the original timeline, that surge happens in moments of fear or desperation. Under Thragg, it becomes a weapon. Thragg would recognize early that Mark's strength spikes under extreme stress. Instead of avoiding those moments, he would manufacture them. Brutal, controlled near-death scenarios would push Mark to trigger that surge again and again. Each time his body floods with adrenaline, his power temporarily exceeds standard Viltrumite limits. Each recovery raises his baseline. Thragg would train Mark to control the surge, to activate it without losing focus. Over time, it stops being a reaction and becomes a switch. Calm 1 second, overwhelming force the next. That edge would make Mark unpredictable in combat. Pure-blooded Viltrumites grow stronger through survival, but they eventually plateau. Mark's hybrid biology might not. His human stress response would continually expand his ceiling, allowing him to surpass expectations in critical fights. What was once considered weakness would become the reason he outgrows most of the Empire. Eventually, he rivals Thragg himself in raw power, but unlike the original Mark, whose strength comes from compassion and the desire to protect, this Mark draws strength from discipline and ambition. He does not question the Empire because he has never been shown an alternative philosophy. Earth becomes a model colony. Humans are categorized by utility. Infrastructure is rebuilt for efficiency, not comfort. Rebellion is crushed before it spreads. Mark oversees planetary management with calculated detachment. He studies human psychology to anticipate unrest. He uses fear strategically, not excessively. Thragg positions him as the future of the Empire, proof that even a half-human can surpass pure blood if raised correctly. The final question is whether this Mark would ever rebel. In the original story, love changes him. His mother's humanity changes him. His friendships change him. Here, those influences are erased early. Thragg never shows weakness, never expresses doubt. He embodies certainty. Without exposure to compassion, Mark has no emotional contrast to measure against Viltrumite ideology. Rebellion requires disillusionment, and in this timeline, Mark is never disillusioned. Instead, he becomes the ultimate Viltrumite. Stronger than Omni-Man ever was, more disciplined than Conquest, more strategic than most generals in the Empire. A ruler shaped by Thragg's hand. The universe does not get a hero named Invincible. It gets something far more terrifying. A conqueror who understands both humanity and Viltrumite brutality, and who chooses conquest every time. And that single change, one different father figure at the moment his powers appear, transforms the entire Invincible universe from a story about resisting destiny into a story about fulfilling it completely. So in the end, if Mark had been raised by Thragg instead of Omni-Man, the universe wouldn't have a flawed hero trying to find his own path. It would get the perfect Viltrumite. Stronger because of his human side, sharper because of Thragg's discipline, and far more dangerous because he would never question the Empire in the first place. Earth wouldn't be defended, it would be optimized. The Coalition wouldn't gain an ally. They'd face their worst nightmare, and every alternate future that once led to rebellion would be systematically erased. But what do you think? Would there be any moment, any person capable of breaking Thragg's hold on Mark, or would this truly be the end of Invincible as we know it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to see more what if scenarios from the Invincible universe, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around.